All right, let me put the link in the chat.
There you go.
So, what have we gathered for this evening?
We are here to talk about Mayweather versus McGregor, and I just needed somebody to vent, like, because I have a lot of shit to vent about because I've been listening to the commentary, and especially from these boxing purists, and it's just really driving me crazy because they're just not giving Conor credit where credit is due.
Just to
Say
be
that
clear, you got us on just so you can vent your frustrations.
well, I'm sure you guys have shit to vent about and talk about too, but yes, that's part of it.
It's totally
This
fine.
is therapeutic for me. Yes.
Well, Connor did make weight, so I'll give him that.
Oh, come on. Is that all you're going to give him credit for? Because that's what a lot of these boxers have been saying. They're like, well, you know, I got to give him credit for having the balls to step in there. That's basically the extent of the credit they'll give him. But to me, it's just such bullshit because, okay, the reason I found this fight intriguing in the first place, it wasn't because I thought like Conor would win or anything like that. It's because there's always been this question of just what is the real difference in skill in boxing when it comes to a professional boxer and an elite MMA striker, right? Because you hear shit like, oh, please, the difference is so huge. They're so fast. They're so much more powerful. Like, they'll get like 6 punches off before you can even get 1 off. You know, they can see the littlest movement in your body. You won't be able to land a punch. You won't be able to do shit. And I want to say, well, shit, if that's true, then fuck. Then yeah, Conor is pretty much fucked. But I wasn't quite buying it. I'm like, I'm going to need to see that to believe it, right? Because I think that might be true for like a mid-level striker or a person off the street, a street fighter. But when it comes to like a top-level MMA striker, I need to see that shit to believe it. So I needed this fight to really answer that question once and for all. And for me, it did answer it. It basically shows that that was all a bullshit myth. It's myth. I'm sorry. There may be a difference, but the difference isn't that huge.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
First of all, Mayweather is 40 years old, and he was never in his career. I've watched his career ever since he was about 25. He was never in his career a puncher. But I think you could hardly use him as an example of what a top flight boxer is capable of doing when he's in his prime. I think if you look at somebody like Golovkin and put him in the ring with somebody like McGregor, then you're talking about the scenarios that you just described a few minutes ago, where the guy's landing 3, 4, 5, 6 punch combinations before McGregor could even have a chance to walk around. That, okay, I think will definitely be a case. I don't think anybody ever thought that this would be one of those fights. I honestly thought that it would be 12 rounds of boring, that he would circle him and land counters and jabs and from a distance. He actually engaged a lot more than I thought he would. Made it actually a much more exciting fight than it could have been. But the conclusion was still the same. He put him down, or it was about to put him down in the ninth.
Yes, but it was not because of an overwhelming skill difference. It was because Conor gassed again, as he had. I mean, he has this problem even in MMA. It wasn't. There's no way. Floyd. I keep hearing this as well. Like Floyd. Oh, he allowed him to do all that. No, no. Floyd didn't allow him to punch him 111 times in the face. He didn't allow him. He didn't punch. Swing at him with the intent of missing 50% of his shots or whatever it was. Conor was slipping. He was moving.
Pacquiao fight.
Hmm?
He owed us for the Pacquiao fight.
Yeah, no, I understand that he didn't fight as cautiously and as defensively as he normally does. So I'm not going to say that.
Then I don't think McGregor would have landed more the same amount of shots. But then again, you're talking about a 40-year-old guy who came out of retirement for this fight.
Yeah, and when they asked him how he felt, did you feel like a 40-year-old man? He said, no, I felt fine. He said it. He said, felt fine.
Did you expect him to answer on?
Nobody wants to admit that.
Yeah, why not? Why wouldn't he admit that? Because then, I mean, that would explain away a lot of stuff. Why not? Why wouldn't he say that?
Because there could be another super fight a year down
Why
the road.
is it so hard? Why is it so difficult for you to believe that maybe Conor really does have pretty decent boxing skills, where he can actually hang?
I watched the fight. He's terrible. He's absolutely
What was terrible about what he did? Do you think, like, I was actually listening?
He looked like an amateur boxer. Even the Olympic guys punch better than he does in terms of boxing punching.
Who cares about boxing punching? See, this is the thing.
Hold on. Do you know what he looked like? He looked like the little punching Irish guy from the Notre Dame logo. That's exactly what his stance looked like.
With a diaper on.
Who cares about his stance? See, the thing is, you're looking for like a
Terrible.
traditional
Because it was terrible
boxer.
boxing.
He doesn't
He
look
was
like a
boxing.
traditional boxer. Who
Or
cares?
fight
What
like
we're
one.
talking
Or
about,
fight like one.
we're
Did you see the
talking
hammer
about
fist? I saw the hammer fist. I saw the hammer fist. That
Yeah,
just
I saw
landing
that, and I don't know why he continually does that. He does that
because you
shit.
can't help yourself.
He does that. I don't know. People always say, and that people were saying like, "Oh, that's an MMA thing." It's like, no, that's actually illegal in MMA as well. So I don't know why Connor keeps doing
He
that
does it all
shit.
the time.
But
He does
It's
it
just
all
his
the time.
killer instinct.
again, yeah, well, it's a killer instinct. Yeah, it is.
Fight.
But
Shh.
but again, you're not giving the guy enough credit. I think it's
Because he's not he's nowhere near the caliber of fighter boxer you have to be to climb into the ring with a boxer in boxing rules. Now, if this is MMA or some sort of open competition like UFC 1 was, where one guy is wearing a boxing glove on one hand and grappling with the other, I mean, maybe that'd be interesting. But in a boxing
It
ring,
was
on boxing
interesting. It was
rules,
interesting as is against the best fighter of all time. You're going to say that just because, oh, he's
did
two
he fight
years,
Mayweather when he was 27 or 28
because
when
he's
Mayweather
40
was
now,
around?
all of a
That's
sudden he's like the biggest bum in the world. I mean, so are you
bum.
suggesting that,
Said
are you
bum. Hold on.
suggesting,
Bum. And nobody said bum, but you're not talking about a guy in his prime. He
who,
didn't spend
but that
5
wasn't
minutes
the
on him.
argument. See, now that these to sound like excuses now, because the argument before
Because he
this
didn't win
fight
definitively enough.
was that
He didn't
Connor
win
wouldn't,
definitively enough.
dude, hold on, let's stop interrupting each other. The argument before this was that an elite MMA striker wouldn't be able to get in there with like any professional boxer, let alone Mayweather, right? So now all of a sudden, what the excuse is, well, come on, Mayweather is old, he's not quite as, I mean,
Connor picked the
the
same
way people were
boxer.
talking, about the difference between boxers and MMA strikers was like this huge chasm. Like there's just unbridgeable in
There
skill.
is.
Like the
There is.
speed,
There is.
the punches, the
There is.
looks, the feints, the footwork, all that shit. I didn't see that. What the
Because you
fuck?
were just being an old man
No,
in the ring.
even oh,
Connor
old
picked
man again. Oh, so in 2 years he just lost everything practically.
Hold on
Come
there.
on.
First of all, Connor picked the most lucrative and the safest fighter to fight. A guy who he towers over by a solid 15 pounds. A guy who is always been
Towers over.
he didn't look like he was
Had
significantly
like
bigger than
300
him in his
pounds
fight.
on him.
He did look bigger, but come on.
He didn't look
Towers.
like- I said 15 pounds, and he had 3 inches of height
Yeah,
on him.
sure,
So
15 pounds. But what they say, I mean, even
Super
Mayweather's himself said it. He's like, look, size, it does not make a difference here. I
because he's trying
mean,
to sell
it's
a punch.
skill.
You're funny. You take everything that they say before they get
Again,
into the
we're
ring.
talking,
They step into the ring.
you're missing the point. We're talking about an O guy. Okay, a guy making his boxing
Who has an
debut,
amateur?
and
Who
you're
has an
sitting there
amateur?
saying that he's like horrible because he didn't. I mean, I would say that for an 0-0 boxer, he did extremely, way better than expected against the best of all time. You
This-
can't even give him that.
He's the best striker in MMA, and the best he could do was hang around for 7.5,
Well,
8
I don't
rounds
know that he's the best striker
until
in MMA.
one of the.
I don't know that he's the best.
Who would you put ahead of him right now?
I have
Give
no
me
idea
your top
because
five.
normally they don't.
Striker
I have
with
no idea
MMA
because
doing with kicks and all. I mean,
Awkward. Give me your top 5 strikers right now.
I don't know.
Give me
They
top
they
5
say
punchers. Okay, give
they
me top
say
5
that
punchers in MMA.
they say
Sorry.
that Max Holloway is a pretty good boxer in his own right. But again, we've never seen these people just boxing. We've seen them in MMA, so that's all we can go
You're
by.
right. Hard's
But
good pick.
I don't know. I have no idea.
It's
But all I'm saying is that
I would put him at the top there.
the question that I wanted to be resolved for me, because again, I've heard all this talk about it's just people, it's like people before the fight talking about how Connor won't even land a punch, right? That was clearly
that
an
was
exaggeration. Even Paulie Malignaggi said, well, that's ridiculous. Even I wouldn't say that. Like,
So
he'll
listen,
land a punch, right?
pundits are saying that to sell a fight for the same reason that guys are saying that Connor's going to win the fight hands down. That he's going to walk away the
No,
baddest of all time. Come on, everyone's trying to
I
sell.
believe it's not about selling. These journalists don't give a fuck about that. They know the fight's going to sell regardless. It's just that a lot of these purists, boxing purists, they literally believe this. They literally believe that the difference between MMA and boxing when it comes to striking abilities is just humongous. It's like, now in certain sports, right, there is that kind of difference. So for instance, when it comes to tennis, you take your best the best tennis player in the world, professional tennis player, and you put him against the best high school varsity tennis player, the difference is enormous. The guy won't even be able to win a game.
That's not a comparison. That's not even a resembling comparison at all. You're talking about the guy who's elite at MMA versus an elite at boxing, and you went over to MMA. There's no comparison. You can't take high school tennis versus pro tennis and say it's a comparison, because it's not. These are both professionals who get paid a lot of money to fight people and strike them and hurt them.
Well, what I'm saying is that the difference in skill talk. I'm not talking about because here's where I think Mayweather really showed, and maybe this is true of all boxers, and maybe this is part of it. And I would be totally willing to concede this. So if it's the case that most boxers, professional boxers, have the cardio and the ability to pace themselves so that they don't get tired, so they can actually last all 12 rounds without dying midway through, and then if that's the metric, then Conor would basically get beat by any professional boxer, right?
How many?
But
How
I'm
many
talking
did Mayweather throw?
just skill-wise.
How many did Mayweather throw?
Did he land? You mean he landed 111?
No, how many did he throw?
Oh, I don't know, but he didn't land. He landed maybe 40% or something, 30.
Yeah, so he threw about 200 punches, right? If you take 200 punches and you average it down to the 9 rounds they had, how much does it come out to? Like roughly 20 punches a round? Maybe a little bit more, 23, 24.
Whatever.
What was the Mayweather numbers?
Well, the thing is, you really to do an apples to apples comparison there, you'd have to go in the early round, because once Conor gassed, of course Mayweather's going to land at will, right?
I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about averages. I'm just talking about averages. The reason why I bring this up is because if you take a good look at an elite boxer today, and I'm not talking about the heavyweight division, but somewhere between say junior welterweight all the way up through middleweight, they're throwing 40, 45, 50 punches around.
Mm-hmm.
45 to 50 punches around, you're throwing. I'm not talking about landing, but you're throwing. Requires ridiculous cardio. The kind of cardio that you don't have in MMA, because you're need to be able to. And
that's fine. That's a fair point.
They also have to land and also hurt somebody. So they're thrown with significant weight behind them.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of them. Some of them are jabs, I agree. But plenty of power punches too.
Yeah, that's a fair point, but that's not what everybody was saying prior to the fight. People weren't saying that Conor was going to lose just by gassing out, that he was going to, he's going to meet toe-to-toe with him skill-wise, but when it comes to the cardio, he's just going to gas out. No, what everybody was saying is that he won't be able to land a punch. Mayweather's going to land at will. He's going to hit him with everything he throws, and it's just going to be humiliating, right? That is not how it played out. He gassed out. Up until that time, it was highly competitive. In fact, you could say that he was actually winning. And then once he gassed out, that's it. I mean, he was a sitting duck at that point.
He won the early rounds. I give him the early rounds because he was active. And Mayweather's on the defense. But you also have to admit,
I know. And some people actually even gave him round 8. I mean, and then actually some people are claiming, I had to go back and watch this to watch the fight again to see if this is actually legit. But some people, these are boxing pundits, are saying that actually the ref may have actually saved Mayweather in the 9th round with that body shot that he said was a low blow, but they're saying that it wasn't actually a low blow. It was just a really good shot that dropped him. I don't know. I'd have to see the fight again, but if that's true, that's crazy, man. I mean,
I think it was the beginning of the 8th round. As soon as it started, Conor ripped him to the body with a left.
And it buckled him. He fell. He went down, and then he started.
It hit him in the balls. It hit him in the balls, dude.
Well, that's what Mayweather was intimating, but I don't. That's unclear.
I've never seen him hurt by a body shot in his career.
Oh, so just because he's never been hurt by a body, that means Conor's incapable of doing it? Come on, man.
He's been hit by some pretty rough punchers in the past, in the same spot. Better punchers than Conor ever were.
Better punchers. It doesn't. All it takes is one. Even if I'm swinging wildly, right? If I catch you with something, you get caught. You're caught. You're caught. It doesn't matter. Just overall.
Right after the break, he threw some pretty hard body shots to Conor, and it didn't really look like he was really that hurt, in my opinion.
I'd have to watch it again. Again, I didn't see it. I was just hearing like this was a boxing analyst who said that the ref may have actually saved Mayweather by giving him time to recover there, because they said that was a legit legal strike. It wasn't a low blow.
Got to get those clicks in, man.
You're very cynical when it comes to like everything, man. I don't know if you've noticed that, but like everything's either it's all bullshit, it's all fake, it's a scam, it's just for clicks, it's for views. Nobody's actually saying what they mean unless they agree with you. Then they're being honest and sincere,
Correct.
and
Correct. Well, now you're getting it.
it's just ridiculous to be a little bit more open-minded than that. I think
Somebody who's gonna
you might
predict
actually be
why
wrong
that's
once in a
happening, and it
while. It's that's might be possible.
hasn't happened yet. So I'm gonna count. I'm gonna play the odds. Right? I'm gonna play the odds. So the truth of the
But
matter
anyway, were you actually entertained by the fight? Were you didn't find it boring, I assume, right?
so I had 6 or 7 people over the house and started watching it on the stream.
Mm-hmm.
And about right before the fight started, the undercard started crapping out on us when it fucking fought it. And it wasn't bad. I don't have any regrets about buying the fight. It was worth seeing. It was a spectacle that everyone saw and everyone needed to see it. They got it out of their system, and now it's done. We can move on.
I thought everybody won. It showed, that boxing, there are certain facets of boxing that are not easy to develop skills like the cardio, the pacing, the composure, that thing that Connor was talking about. That probably doesn't come easy. That probably requires many, many years of experience to develop that. But I thought Connor also represented MMA well in showing that, yeah, they can actually hang skill for skill, even with the best of them, right? And like the chasm isn't that huge. He didn't humiliate himself out there. He didn't look like some guy off the street. He could actually, like, I wouldn't have been able to dodge those punches from Mayweather. I mean, again,
Well, you're not a professional fighter,
I
man.
know, but even take an average person in the UFC, even a pretty decent, like GSP. Even I don't think GSP would be able to slip.
Talk about a half retired fighter who's coming back from a long
Even
layover.
GSP in his prime wouldn't have been able to slip. I don't, because I never really saw that from GSP.
He couldn't dodge a right hook from a fat Long Islander. Okay, so I doubt he's going to dodge a lot of punches from a real boxer. Okay, a wrestler that is.
Well, there you go.
So, but you don't watch boxing all that often, I take it, right?
You're right, I don't.
So I want you to watch an upcoming fight. I want you to watch
Canelo versus Golovkin, which I will, and I'm hoping, because I'm being a schmuck now, I'm hoping it ends up being the most boring fucking fight ever. just so that all these purist motherfuckers who say this is what boxing's all about, this is a real fight, and then it just turns out being a total shit show. Worse than.
You want to see some real fight? Go on YouTube and look up Corrales versus what was that guy who died in a bike accident? What the fuck was his name?
So morbid, bro.
Castillo. Sorry, Corrales.
Oh yeah, I've seen that fight. It was a brawl. It was like they were back and forth. It was fucking awesome. One of the greatest fights ever. I've seen it.
Mickey Ward versus Gotti. You ever seen that fight?
No, I haven't seen that.
Oh my god. I recommend both.
But you can do that with MMA as well. I mean, you can find a whole bunch of great fights.
But the thing is, it's all up and down. Like, especially the problem is that modern boxing is much more scientific than it ever was. Like, if you go back 20, 30 years, you have a lot more exciting fights. You go look at like a Hagler versus what's his face, who was champion of.
The other thing is, so even into the lead up to the fight, one of the things that caused me to doubt this narrative that, elite boxers or even, mid-level pro boxers are just so much higher level quality and skill and everything than elite MMA strikers, was the Paulie Malignaggi sparring, right? And not just the clip that was released, but just the way people were talking about it. It just the fact that Connor could even hang with an ex-champion, right? Like Paulie Malignaggi was, right? Could even be in there and landing these bombs on him and shit, and even, dropping him arguably to the ground.
This was like a caveman taking on a cyborg. I mean,
caveman versus a cyborg. Who's the caveman? Who's the cyborg? Which fight are we talking about?
No, I'm talking about like in levels of progression of each sport. Boxing's been around so much longer, and the athletes are more well developed compared to the MMA, where we haven't come that far yet, and the athletes are only so good.
Yeah, but I don't like when you look at the actual result, right? When you see them, when you see it side by side, it just didn't. What you just described, that's not what I saw on the screen on Saturday night. That's not what I saw.
You're being very disingenuous by trying to categorize all of boxing by watching one fight.
By watching the best fighter of all time take on an 0-0 guy making his boxing debut.
Is there a difference watching Mike Holyfield at the end of his career and then Mike Holyfield in the prime of his career? Are you
against
saying
an 0-0 fighter making his boxing debut? Yeah, I think that says
0-0
something.
fighter. Stop it. He had one of the better camps probably a non-boxer ever has. He brought in
2 months.
professional ex-champion fighters. The guy's been conditioning himself for years in MMA. I'm sorry, the conditioning is not that much different. Sure, you have to pace yourself differently, but it still requires ridiculous amounts of cardio. Both sports do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, this is not an excuse that this guy.
What excuse? Again, everybody was saying that he will get hit. He will get humiliated. He'll get hit at will. He only got hit at will once he gassed, kind of like in the Nate Diaz fight.
Fighter who has 1 foot in the grave, he still couldn't.
Let's put it 1 foot in the grave. Jesus Christ!
His career for sure.
And you talk about me being disingenuous, dude. Listen to yourself. This is just ridiculous.
It's like saying that Hopkins was slow.
Lloyd gonna come out of retirement on that one.
He was going after a geriatric or something. I mean, that he was in great shape. You look at him; he was fucking shredded. You look at he was. I thought Mayweather looked
Hopkins
as he always does.
On his fight too. Hopkins was shredded at 47. It doesn't mean that he can still fight like a guy who's 40, like 35 or even 33. Mayweather a couple years ago was a completely different fighter than the one that you saw last night. Nobody knew.
Mayweather a couple of years ago was just as boring, if not even more boring than he is now.
But
I haven't seen much of a
It's
difference.
not about boring or not. It's about his footwork. The guy was a much better fighter a couple of years ago because he could avoid getting hit. The amount of punishment he took from Conor honestly surprised me because I've never seen him take that much fighter, especially from somebody.
And instead of giving that credit to Conor, you want to just say, well, it was Mayweather just sucked. He had an off night. He was old. He's a geriatric. Is on. 1 foot in the grave.
Are you saying I can't be impartial to Mayweather's fighting just because Conor was his opponent?
I think here's what I think. No, let me tell you what I think is happening with you, whether you want to admit it or not. And that's not just with you, but all the other boxing purists, the very cynical people who were dismissing this fight.
I watch more MMA.
I said the other people, the purists, the other naysayers. In other words, the other naysayers who are these boxing purists who were basically shitting all over this fight before it even occurred. They're saying this is going to be a joke. This is a circus. This is going to be a total humiliation. It's a joke. It was not, right? So what I'm thinking is that those people, deep down inside, if you think about it honestly, were proven wrong, including you. And I think now, in order to save face, you want to make it make it seem as though this was an absolute demolition when it wasn't. It absolutely was not. It was a competitive fight until Conor gassed.
I have not said anything to the contrary to what you just said.
Well, then how is it a joke? Then how is it a circus? You know how many fights end up this way where a guy gasses in boxing, and it happens on both sports. People gas, and these are pros that gas, pros that get knocked out early. It happens, right? But for some reason, Conor is being judged so much more like the scrutiny is just so much.
Sorry,
I mean, it's almost like the Trump shit, you would agree with me on this, right? That everything that Trump does is nitpicked to the nth degree of absurdity. Unlike, if Obama had done the same thing, nobody thinks anything of it, but because Trump did it, oh my God, this is like the craziest thing ever. Same thing with Conor. Any little thing,
Stop. You're going over the top. The reason why he's scrutinized is because he throws himself into the spotlight. If he was a nobody from nowhere who was having a random fight, nobody would give a fuck. He does this to himself.
Do you use the same excuse with Trump? So is that how you justify the total nitpicking and bullshit on Trump? You don't justify that.
The fact of the matter is,
we both agree.
Hold on. Every president in the history of time has probably been nitpicked. Obviously,
not the way Trump is. We both know that. Come on.
First of all, you're right about that. But second of all, we've had very few presidents who live in the kind of who've lived in the kind of communication era that we live in today, right? You have so many different outlets, so many different sources.
Well, Twitter existed while Obama was president.
It did, but it wasn't used. And towards the end of his tenure, it was used against him just as often. It was used for him, but he grew in that era. It didn't exist during the Bush administration, in my opinion.
Here's what I think. I just think that because you went all in, basically express your opinion before the fight, you're kind of, at this point, you kind of have to say this because you don't want to admit that Conor did better than you expected. You don't want to.
I was right. I was right. Like if he took a dive or if he was seriously hurt.
Wait, what were you right about?
That it would be a mostly boring fight, and it was.
It was not a mostly boring fight. I was at the edge of my seat the whole fucking fight. What are you talking about?
You might have been the only one. I mean,
oh, really? The only one? No, everybody in my house was watching it. We were watching it because I actually thought Conor was winning the first 5 rounds. I'm not even kidding. I thought it was 5-1 going into the 6th. I think it was. It was, and I was like, holy shit, he might actually do this, right? And then he gassed, and then that was all she wrote, and then it was over at that point. But yeah, so of course it's exciting. How the fuck can you be bored when you think that is the biggest upset is about to happen? You cannot.
I didn't think for a single minute there that Mayweather was in trouble.
Of course, because, well, it wasn't based on skill. You must have been anticipating that he was going to gas out. And how could you know that for sure? Because I thought he claimed that he had fixed his cardio issues. Obviously, he was mistaken. But he claimed that. And he seemed to be okay so far. So I'm like, man, if that's true, if he actually did fix his cardio issues and he keeps this up, he might actually win this fight. Now, it turns out he would have lost anyway because the judges are ridiculous. That's another thing I want to talk about here. The judging is, now I understand why Floyd is undefeated, because the judges, for whatever reason, are so biased in his favor. It's crazy. I've never seen anything like it.
Hold on.
They only gave Conor 1 round. The first round only? Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, that's some bullshit.
First of all, you're absolutely right. The officiating in boxing in general was some of the worst in any sport, period. I will wholeheartedly agree with you there. But on your second point, and this is not defending myself or whatever, but I've seen the last 15, 20 Mayweather fights, and he has won the last 15, 20 fights.
Well, weren't there a few where people claimed robbery that it was actually much closer?
He's done some dirty shit, but he's won legitimately almost all of his fights. The only fight that I would say in the last 5 years that Mayweather had that I thought was controversial is the one that he had with the South American dude. What was his name? I'll tell you right now. And I really like that fighter too.
Marquez?
Maidana?
Well, I love Marquez, but he bought Maidana. Yeah. He had some wars with Marquez. Yeah. He only had one fight with Maidana.
Well, yeah, that's another fight. That one, Marquez is the one where he did the cheap shot and he knocked him out, right? That was such bullshit.
No, that wasn't Marquez. That was with what's his face? Ortiz.
Oh, okay. Victor Ortiz. Yeah, yeah, that was some bullshit because that guy, like, the guy was really taking it to Mayweather. I thought he was winning, to be honest, until the cheap shot.
Dirty shit. He's a terrible guy.
But anyway, like, is insane. Like, I've never seen. How the fuck do you give Mayweather the second and third rounds? I don't understand how you do that. He threw almost nothing, and Conor was the one landing almost all. You look at CompuStrike even, like, or CompuBox, whatever the fuck it is. He won those rounds clearly. How the fuck did they give that to Mayweather? There is some serious bias going on there. And in Showtime, they were scoring it, and they had it 5-4 going into the 10th round. So it was a really close fight. But apparently these two judges, and it wasn't all 3 judges. I'll bet you it was the international judge that was scoring it honestly.
Letterman's scoring was pretty accurate. I'll agree with it. The Letterman scoring was pretty good.
Was that the international guy? Because I know Conor demanded to be there be an international judge.
No, that's the so. It was Showbox, right? So Showbox, they employ somebody who's basically like a judge himself. Howard Letterman is his name.
Okay.
I think it's Howard Letterman.
Well, yeah. So I don't know. I actually thought 3 is a bit conservative, unfair.
Letterman, excuse me.
I mean, okay, I guess I was biased. Because the thing is, when you're watching a fight and you really want someone to win, you're probably focusing more on what they're doing, and you're not focusing enough on what the opponent's doing. So I concede it's possible that it wasn't 5-1 as I was seeing it. It could have been maybe 4 or 3, but it was competitive. That's the point. Some of those rounds were really close, and it could go either way. And to me, that alone vindicates Conor, and to me, it says a lot about this.
Good.
It's myth. Again, to me, it was exposed as a myth. The difference between elite, the best boxers, or even just pro boxers in general, and the elite MMA strikers. I don't think the difference in skill, talking about like hands, footwork, speed, power, all that shit. I don't think the difference is as huge there. But perhaps the difference in pacing and cardio and composure is very different. Another thing that I've heard in the commentary, which I think is legit, is the pro boxers have so much experience that they're able to switch up their game plans, and they have like plan A, B, C, different styles that they can turn to if something's not working. So in this fight, what a lot of the commentators and the analysts were saying was that, and Conor himself was saying it, is that Mayweather had to basically adjust because some of the things that he was trying early on weren't working against Conor. So then he basically became that, as Conor called it, that Mexican type fighter. And Conor wasn't expecting that. He didn't train for that. He said in the post-fight interviews that he had one sparring partner that simulated that style, but he didn't use him enough. He only used him for like 6 rounds. He said if he had sparred with him a lot more, he would have been much more prepared for that style of fighting. And because he said he wasted a lot of energy on that. When Floyd was coming forward with his hands up like that, and he was like basically in his chest, in Conor's chest, Conor was just basically wasting a lot of money, energy, just punching the side of his head, his arms, and he was just wasting a lot of energy, and that's why he gassed out. So, props to Mayweather for that. That probably comes with experience. I think most boxers probably have that skill, but that is not what most people were saying about the difference between elite MMA striking and professional boxing. They were talking about the difference in like everything across the board, like the speed, the punching power, the movement, the footwork, the elusiveness, all that shit across. So if that was actually true, Conor would have been just humiliated. Now you're saying,
hold on, what are you saying? So are you saying that it was Mayweather who was a fraud, or are you saying that the sport of boxing was a fraud? Because those two.
I'm saying the hype, the narrative that there's this huge chasm, this huge difference.
So there's a lot of hype.
There's a difference, but the difference is not that huge. It's not as huge as people were claiming.
So what were they wrong about? You're saying that they were wrong. They were wrong about the hype.
I just explained the difference. I'm saying they were wrong about the difference in skill when it comes.
Or is the fault with the sport? Are you saying that the boxing?
Oh no, it's not with the sport. It's with the idea that these people have, the myth. It's like when people had this myth, the myth about Ronda Rousey, the myth of Fedor. Those were myths that were eventually exposed. Right? People were seeing these people as untouchable gods, right? Like, oh my God, the difference between Ronda and the next, the next best opponent is just so huge. And everybody's like, yeah. And then people were just going with it. It's like groupthink, it's like a bunch of sheep.
So what you're saying, what you're trying to tell me right now is that an elite boxer in his prime is not significantly better at boxing than an elite fighter in his prime in MMA. Those are what you're saying in the sport of boxing.
Not as big as what people are letting on. Correct.
And the example that you have is of Mayweather, who's a 40-year-old fighter.
40-year-old, yeah. Oh no, 1 foot in the grave, right? Jesus.
No, but the example of elite fighter that you're using is Mayweather. So you're saying
yes, the best of all time.
But the best of all time at 40 years old.
This era. The best of all time of this era.
Are you saying that he's in the prime of his career right now?
No.
So he's not in the prime of his career.
No. So what? Again, we're talking about if a guy who is 0-0,
are you really
pro boxing debut.
Same thing. You're talking about it as if he just fought Lomachenko, or he fought Golovkin, or he fought even what's his name, Andre Ward, or he didn't fight any of these guys.
Again, nobody was saying that prior to the fight. Prior to the fight,
it matters what you're saying now.
You and everybody else.
It matters what you're saying now, though. What those people said was wrong. Mayweather didn't turn out to be an elite fighter.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm saying was wrong. That's what I'm saying was wrong.
He didn't turn out to be an elite fighter.
Say that
You're
again?
absolutely right. That he didn't turn out to be an elite fighter. You're absolutely right. He's not an elite fighter anymore. If you're talking about that point,
well, dude, okay, well, what do you consider elite then? Is there like maybe 1 or 2 elite fighters then in boxing? That's kind of ridiculous. That's not what we were talking about.
I'll give you 10 fighters. I'll give you all of them. Everybody on the top, the pound for pound right now on the top 10.
Okay, and then you're just gonna claim that they would demolish me, and we'll never know if that's actually true or not. You're just gonna claim that it's just like what's his face Oscar De La Hoya just said it yesterday. He goes, oh man, Canelo would knock out McGregor in the first round. That sounds exactly what like what everybody was saying about Floyd doing to Conor. And then so it's like it's called moving the goalpost. It's like he proves himself, he hangs in there with Mayweather. Nobody was mentioning anything about being the 40-year-old comment, that was like a side thing. It was like he's gonna demolish him even as a 40-year-old over the hill, guy in his twilight of his career, right?
Did he knock him out though?
So now, no, it was a TKO, and it wasn't a knockout like because of skill. It was because he was. I could have knocked out Conor at that point. Once you're gassed out, it has nothing to do with skill. It's just your sitting duck.
Oh, so now you're making excuses. I got you. So when the other side,
not an excuse. He gassed. I already admit that. What the fuck? So but that's not what the narrative was. Nobody was saying before the fight. Oh well, you know what? Yeah, Conor.
Well, hold on. How do you think boxing get knocked out? You think they're just You think they're all running around with full energy right about the time they get knocked out? That they get a lucky a punch lands?
Let's put it this way. Nobody before the fight was saying, "Oh yeah, I bet Conor's going to hang in there with Floyd for the first 5, 6 rounds, but then he's going to gas, and then he's going to be a sitting duck, and then he'll get knocked the fuck out." Nobody was saying that. What they were saying is, "You're going to get clowned from bell to bell."
I said he's going to gas. Everyone's been saying that he's going to gas. Where are you reading? Everyone said he was going to gas.
They weren't saying that that was going to be the reason that he loses. They were saying that Mayweather was going to have his way with him. He was going to just humiliate him. He was not going to be able to land a punch. Floyd was going to land like pretty much everything at will.
Not true.
Because that was part of the myth. That's what people believe. I hope now, those people probably won't admit it now, but now they know that is a bunch of bullshit.
Everybody I read this, and everybody in the channel was saying the same thing, which this was going to be a long, drawn-out fight. I don't know who told you it was going to be a knockout, but
a long, drawn-out fight that wouldn't be competitive. Yeah, because they were saying that they were assuming that Conor would be able, like his cardio would be able to last for all 12 rounds, right? What?
I didn't. He wouldn't have lasted. The only thing that I predicted that was different is that Mayweather actually got aggressive in the middle and late rounds. I thought he was just going to wear him out.
Which I predicted, by the way, because I believed him when he said, because I didn't think that he was going to, because it would have been like such a pussy, cowardly move for him to play it safe, right? In his final fight against a guy making his boxing debut with an 0-0 record, and he's going to go out and fight defensively and that cautiously. Yeah, I don't think he wants to remember that way. He wanted to go out with a bang, so I knew he was going to come out somewhat aggressively.
When you go out aggressively, you expose yourself to getting punched or counterpunched.
I agree. That's right. That's why I don't think it's necessarily fair to compare.
Hold on. And quite frankly, the last thing I thought Mayweather wanted on his record is any kind of chance a guy like a scrub in the game of boxing, in the sport of boxing, to knock him out and tarnish that 49-0 and 50-0 record that he has now. He was going to go down as the guy with the longest undefeated career of all time, and he did. And if he was to open himself up, my thought was that he would take a chance unnecessarily to expose himself to somebody who is a known puncher. Like you said, he's not a boxer.
Except he's not. And I think that's what he realized. That's a thing that I learned as well. That's another myth. Dude, hold on. That's another myth that came out of this. Just so you understand that I'm being objective here and I'm not being just.
You're not at all being objective whatsoever. So, you're leading a
grief.
boxing.
So one of the things that came out in this fight as well that I think is a myth that to me now has been proven for me is that he really isn't the huge puncher that everybody made him out to be. And I already kind of believed Paulie when he was saying that. I didn't really see any reason for him to lie. And 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 clearly he doesn't. Like I don't know, he hit Floyd with some pretty good shots, and when you listen to Floyd afterwards, like does he have power? Is he really his power? He's like, he's got some power, but he's not like nothing I'd never seen before. It wasn't like anything that impressive, and I believe it. So that was a myth, another myth that was revealed by this fight. People were just basing too much on that that quick 13-second knockout, and these other,
not just. He's had some pretty spectacular knockouts. Awkward. You've seen some of them, no?
What's that?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not the only one who's seen Conor knock out a bunch
I'm
of
not
people.
saying that Conor doesn't have knockout power. He clearly does. I mean, Jesus. But I'm just saying it's not the kind of power, like the kind of power that everybody would say, like this legendary kind of power where, he's just like, oh my God, he touches you and you fall. Like basically what Conor's been saying all the whole time. It's like, you touch me, I touch you with my left and you're going down. And if I can't catch you with the left, I'll get you with the right and you'll fall down anyway. Like
is Liddell legendary? Who's the legendary guys in the UFC? Give me your legendary guys in the UFC who have.
Well, we're not talking about legendary guy. We were talking about legendary punching power.
So give me who are you on your list of legendary punching power, regardless of sport.
Well, what they say is Canelo. They say Golovkin.
Canelo?
I mean, that's what they say.
Canelo? I've never heard anybody talk about the prolific power that Canelo has.
That's what I thought. That's what I've heard. I've heard in interviews, and they say I've never been hit as hard. Like, for instance, that guy, what's his name? Van Heerden, the guy who sparred McGregor. He says that he's never been hit so hard in sparring than when he sparred against Canelo. Like it was just jarring. It's like, holy shit. Like he sparred so many people.
He didn't say that leading up to a fight, did he? Just out of curiosity, leading up to that.
He said it just a couple weeks ago when he was doing an interview
you mean like
talking about Conor. No, he said because he was talking about his sparring with Conor. He goes, Conor, I never really felt anything. That's another reason I kind of felt that it was a myth, because it wasn't just Malignaggi who was saying it. It was also this other guy, Van Heerden, who was saying it. Like, look, I sparred him, and honestly, I wasn't phased by any of his punches.
Did you see the difference in the type of punch? Not necessarily like the power or whatever, but did you see how differently boxers punch as opposed to MMA fighters?
Yeah, I think you're reading like I don't care about that though. Like who cares? Like what matters is the effectiveness, whether you're landing, that sort of thing.
No, sir. The technique of the punch itself is different completely.
I'm not a boxing aficionado, so
hold on. You're punching with pillows on your hand, right? When you're punching in MMA, you're punching with 4-ounce gloves. You could graze somebody and knock them out, as has happened in MMA on a regular basis. Okay, when you're punching with pillows on the top of your hands, you have to punch in such a way as to make them hurt your opponent, whether it's their face or their body. If you throw your punches awkwardly or at an angle, or any other way, yeah, they'll land, and some of them will even land flush. But if they don't carry any significant power behind them, because, again, you are wearing a pillow on your hand, then they won't do any damage. So the guys who go out there and are power punchers wearing pillows on their hands know what they're doing. And you should watch how they punch people. So which is why I'm telling you to watch Golovkin fight. He is a real power puncher. He hurts people with those pillows. Okay. He destroys people in the ring. He makes them hurt. Like there's been a few punchers in history of boxing that have made punish people. Like Duran. I don't know if you've ever seen a Roberto Duran fight. He wasn't a particularly big guy. He wasn't a particularly fast guy. But when he punched you, when he landed a punch on you, you felt it. People would go down. He would punch you in the liver, and you wouldn't get up for a week. Mm-hmm. You know, there's stories of this guy. The people would piss blood and like shit. You know, all sorts of things.
Yeah, but a lot of that also has to do with like your physical structure, your physical makeup. Like Paulie Malignaggi even said. I mean, again, I don't like Paulie because I thought he was acting like a fucking crazy ex-girlfriend, but I do believe what other people say is that he's a very good boxing analyst. And what he has said is that this punching power thing, it's like you either have it or you don't. You can only train that so much, but basically you either have it or you don't. And he's basically saying that Conor doesn't have it. What?
It's a deep power.
Some of it might come from technique. I'm sure some of it does, but I think the majority of it has to do just you know, just how you're built.
It is. It is. It really is. Some of it is maybe ingrained. Like there's certain people that just know how to punch. I've been hit before.
Well, it's not just technique. I'm saying it has something to do with like the way your body's structured, the way your hips are, the ratio, the hip to whatever ratio.
Yeah, the fuck schedule, whatever it is.
Yeah. But anyway, so there I am. So now you know, like I'm looking at this, trying to look at this as objectively as possible. So honestly, I do believe that myth of Conor's punching power was exposed. It was exposed as a myth, the punching power. But I also think that the difference in skill level, I'm not talking about, I mean, if you want to consider pacing and cardio to be a skill, fine, whatever. But that's not what I think most people are talking about.
But your body has to be up to your level of your skill. No one's going to question Mayweather's skills as a boxer. The guy's going to go down, as you said, in history as one of being the top 10 fighters of all time, and he earned that.
Right. Absolutely. And a lot of that had to do with his composure, his ability to not take much damage. You know, being able to switch up game plans in the middle when something's not working. So, but those are like the intangibles. Those are like that's somewhere like fight IQ. That's not so much what like most people were talking. Like when people were talking about this huge chasm between the two, it was mostly like just speed, skill, power, footwork, head movement, all of that shit. And when I look at that fight, I didn't see that huge difference. It just wasn't there. So I don't buy it.
He was just composed.
What's that?
So he wasn't even that fast. He was just composed.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's not what people were saying before the fight. Before the fight, they were saying that Mayweather was just going to be so much quicker. He was going to land at will, and he didn't land at will. He landed at will once Conor was completely gassed. Like kind of like Nate Diaz. In the Nate Diaz fight, I mean, shit, once Conor got tired, it was basically all over. But he did get a second win in that Nate in the second fight. And by the way, what about this thing about the stoppage? And Conor says it should have. In my opinion, that's another more bullshit. I think the stoppage was fine. I think it was a foregone conclusion. He was completely gassed. And I don't think, because Conor was saying that, you know, you should let me get back to my corner and catch my breath, and then I could have come back. And it's like, and then Mayweather has to deal with his cardio. It's like, okay, first of all, Mayweather wasn't gassed at all. Like, I don't think he was going to be contending with any cardio issues between rounds. And yeah, I think he was totally fine. So that's like a pipe dream. And Conor, I don't think he was going to recover cardio-wise either. Like, he was just gone. I think he was basing that on like the Paulie Malignaggi fight and a sparring match, because based on the description of Paulie's description of the fight, basically Conor kind of gassed out a bit in those same rounds, 6, 7, 8 round, and that's where Paulie really took it to him. But then like Conor got his second wind in the 11th, 12th round, he claims. But I think it's more what Paulie said. I think Paulie just got tired by the 11th and 12th round. And then when Conor started landing some blows and they were effective, he kind of interpreted that as, oh, I got my second win. No, you got your second win because you started landing on Paulie and you got excited, right? But that doesn't mean you got your second win. If Paulie had been fresh, you probably would have still gotten beaten up in the 11th, 12th round. So no, I don't know what it is with Conor. He really needs to fix that problem. He says he does. He says I don't think it's physical, because man, if anybody looks at the way I train, I'm in shape, man. I am in shape. I've worked my ass off for this. So he thinks it might be something mental going on, where he just mentally in the middle of a fight, he just loses it. I don't know, but he definitely needs to fix that, because in MMA, if he goes up against Nate in that trilogy, man, Nate has cardio for fucking days. And if he gasses like that again, it's over.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully this was Mayweather's last fight. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, it is. It is. Trust me, I believe it, because it's a nice number, man. That's a nice number to retire on, 50-0.
And I will look forward to an opportunity that an elite boxer in his prime will get a chance to fight an elite MMA fighter.
It's kind of an unfair comparison, though, because it's like that's not the myth, though. The myth was never the question was never elite versus elite. It was more like just pro boxer, just pretty good pro boxer versus
gotta
even
expect
an
something
elite MMA striker. The difference is huge. Everybody was saying the difference is just enormous. And now
honestly,
we didn't
outside
just see a mid-level pro boxer. We saw the best of all time of this era. So, I mean, to me, that just shatters that myth. It exposes it. But
Can I tell you one that exposes a shattered myth? Can I tell you one?
Go ahead.
I'll give you an example of a shattered myth, right? And I'm sure this is a story you've heard before, or both of you might have actually heard it before. Probably around the year 2000, 2001, the Serena sisters wanted to test how good they were in tennis. At the time, they were ranked in the top 10.
Billie Jean King? Is that who you're going to talk about? Oh, okay.
They were ranked in the top 10. They weren't number one yet. I think they were only 19 or 20 years old at the time. But you could say they were at their peak physically, right? They were getting to the top. And they were going to play a guy who was ranked 250. Okay? And as someone who saw the story go down, the guy was basically on the tour because he had nothing better to do. He was like 41 years old or 42 years old. He was just about out of there. He smoked like a pack and a half or 2 packs of cigarettes a day. As a matter of fact, when he got to the arena, he smoked a cigarette. He was smoking a cigarette on the court, and they even claim, I don't know how true this is, that he might have actually smoked a cigarette on the last set. Okay, he beat I think it was Serena Williams. He beat her 6-0, 6-1.
Yeah,
there's a 250 or 260 at the time. That is what I call trounced.
That's a chasm in skill level right there, and speed and strength, and I mean just everything.
And maybe I don't even know if it's skill. Maybe there's skill there. Maybe the skill isn't that dissimilar.
Maybe
but a guy who's hitting a serve, his typical serve, right, at 125, 130 miles an hour, 115 miles an hour, as opposed to women's who are used to hitting at 105, 107. It's just the strike, the serves. It's coming at you as if, and this is a 41-year-old, a 42-year-old guy. You know what I mean? And he's just 250 in the men. You know what I'm saying?
Well, let me tell you how bad it is. Now, the best tennis player in my high school was really good. Like, relative to everybody in our school, he was awesome. Like, he was really, really good. When he went to like the state championships, just the states, right?
He was a nobody,
the guy that he was competing against, he literally had to serve it underhand just to make it competitive. I mean, just because if like every time that he wouldn't be able to return it, he wouldn't be able to like touch it, the ball. So the guy literally started serving it underhand just to make it somewhat competitive, which it wasn't. I mean, but this is the difference in levels when it comes to tennis. Shit, it is huge. And MMA, it's not like that, because one punch can like change the whole. You can get a guy off the street, lands a good punch on you, it's over. With a fluke, there's like the sports like boxing less than MMA because they got pillows, like you said, on the gloves, on their hands. But even boxing is susceptible to flukes, right?
Absolutely, flash chaos happening.
Like 1 or 2 flukes, and it could change the whole fight. In tennis, in order for somebody off the street, they would have to be like 1,000. It would have to be like 1,000 flukes in a row. It just would never happen. And same thing with bowling. Like in bowling, you could have a good game and get like 241 or something and beat like pretty much every pro player out there. But the difference is at the consistency, right? It's just like
every game in and out, you're able to.
Their averages are so huge.
Absolutely.
Right. But boxing and MMA, what makes it so intriguing is that it's that like anything can happen. Like it's not a foregone conclusion all the time. It's fascinating.
I had a friend of mine who used to